Good evening, I'm Danica DiGiorgio, filling in tonight for Sharri. Coming up, the government's web of lies is coming undone. The full scale of just how exposed our borders are coming up. Queensland's top cop walks away from the job as her state suffers yet another bout of horrific youth crime. And the part-time prince, King Charles, responds to Harry's offer to temporarily return to his royal duties. But first, if there was any doubt about the weaknesses in our border protection policy, new information about how almost 40 asylum seekers managed to evade detection and make it to the mainland last week should send alarm bells ringing. Last night, Sharri revealed that Border Force knew of the asylum seekers' arrival north of Broome in WA well before it was made public on Friday.
There was widespread knowledge of the illegal arrivals among Defence personnel. A source contacted me about the illegal boat arrival on Thursday evening, saying, and I quote, "I'm led to believe that illegal boats are arriving and the Army is involved in managing it and keeping it quiet."
And now the full scale of just how exposed we are has been laid bare. Paige Taylor in The Australian is reporting the 39 men probably reached the beach at midnight on Monday, and the crew were no dummies. They knew the way to get a big vessel close to shore was to do it in 2 days after a new moon on the biggest tide. One group walked south on the sand, another went into the bush. How do we know this? Because traditional owners of the Dampier Peninsula figured it out before Border Force had a chance to interrogate the men about their journey. So let me get this right. The boat could have arrived on Monday, and yet on Friday, 4 days later, this is all the PM could offer up.
I've been travelling in the car, so I haven't been advised about that.
Asleep on the wheel on this issue and apparently asleep in his car. The Aboriginal people even found a campsite too, which appears to support what Border Force later learned from the men. The people's smugglers instructed their clients to wait in the bush for 4 days before seeking help. This was intended to give the smugglers time to leave Australian waters. Oh, and it gets even more farcical. A senior Indigenous man used an inexpensive drone to alert ABF to both the asylum seeker boat landing site and the campsite used by the arrivals. Seriously, this is extraordinary. An Indigenous man using a drone bought from JB Hi-Fi, would you believe it, actually alerted Border Force. Looking for a job? Become an amateur sleuth. Go on the hunt for boats. Just whip out your drone. I mean, seriously. How on earth did Operation Sovereign Borders miss them? We now know quite clearly that people smugglers know how to get around the gaping holes in our border security. As I said on my show on Friday night, when this news first broke, Australia is open for business, so far as the people smugglers are concerned. It's green lights for them everywhere. Let's look at the key facts. More than 32,000 asylum seekers have arrived since Labor was elected. More than 62 people claimed asylum in Australia every day last year under Labor, an increase of 70% on the previous year. And yet, according to ABF figures, there's been a 20.7% decrease in aerial flying hours and 12.2% fall in maritime patrol days in 2022 to 23, compared with aerial and maritime surveillance hours logged in 2020 to 21. No wonder 39 men managed to arrive undetected north of Broome last week, and 12 arrived at the remote Aboriginal community of Kalambaroo along the Kimberley coastline in November. The PM's response today? Blame Peter Dutton.
When Peter Dutton said that people smugglers listen to what the government says, they also listen to what the bloke who wants to be the alternative Prime Minister of Australia says. And in his irresponsible comments, they can be seen as nothing other than encouraging this activity. And he needs to be held accountable for that.
I mean, seriously, how embarrassing. This is not a game. Stop playing politics and take some action. We should be scared that the ghosts of the Rudd-Gillard era are circling this government. Yet here we are in 2024 with a PM completely in denial. And I mean, how can we even pretend to be surprised here? Who could forget this chronic case of Albo not being across his brief in the lead up to the 2022 election? Talk about contradicting yourself.
Do you remain committed to Operation Sovereign Borders, and if so, do you support the retention of temporary protection visas?
Yes, we don't support temporary protection visas.
Does he really think that's the kind of messaging that's going to see people smugglers give us a wide berth? I don't think so. The government needs to come clean on what it is doing to maintain our border security, because if we don't even know when an asylum seeker boat reaches our shores or when criminals are released from immigration detention, how could we possibly be capable of defending ourselves from attack? Joining me now is former Speaker of the House, Bronwyn Bishop, and Sky News host, Caleb Bond. Lovely to be with you both tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Bronwyn, let's start, of course, with this asylum seeker issue. The fact Aboriginal elders figured it out before Border Force, what does that tell you about our current border protection policies?
Well, let's just go to that statement by the Prime Minister. And I'm sitting here having a giggle. But seriously, everything he has always been for open borders. We know that. He appoints a minister who's the secretary of the Socialist Left faction who wants open borders and represented the asylum seekers of the Tampa in court before he got the job. That's a big message. Abolish temporary protection visas, as we just saw again. And whenever there's a statement about this issue, it's fudged.
Yes.
He cannot stand up and look anybody in the face and say, I don't really believe in this. He pretends all the time. Fancy trying to say that it's the leader of the opposition that's sending the wrong message. I mean,
where did he get that from?
How pathetic can you get? And seriously, the surveillance question is very important. I've actually done those surveillances. I've done the 8-hour flights where we can fly very low over the ocean and pick up the boats. The Maritimes component is also very important because they actually intercept them. But I remember being out on one occasion and Navy actually lost the boat. We had to go and find it again. Link them up again. And we actually caught the people there were with their phones saying, here we are,
I can imagine, waving frantically.
So that surveillance is very, very important.
Absolutely.
And we have a very important group up there called Norforce, which is part of the ADF. It's a reservist unit. And they have their own units that go out and do surveillance. And I think there's room to include a Coast Watch, to include some of these Aboriginal people there.
I think so
but
too.
But at the end of the day, we are letting the borders open again because of the Prime Minister. He wears the blame.
Absolutely, and thank goodness for those Aboriginal elders. Another really important story around today, Queensland's top cop has quit her role early as officers begin to revolt over the state's spiralling youth crime crisis. This was her this morning.
The Queensland Police Service response to youth crime has been outstanding. Outstanding. It is one of the most vexed and complex issues that we are dealing. We have seen the nature of offending in this cohort of children completely change post-COVID. It's dangerous, it's escalating.
So Katarina Carroll gone today, Caleb. It's the first scalp in this youth crime crisis. But realistically, how big of a difference would a change in police commissioner actually make when it comes to the response to this?
Well, you require a police commissioner who actually wants to do something about it, but it's also reliant on a police minister who is willing to support said police commissioner. I am not the least bit sad to see Carroll go. I mean, look, we're talking about last week, I think it was a well-respected copper in Queensland was suspended for allowing his officers to ram a stolen car. Now, by ramming that stolen car, it allowed those alleged youth offenders in that vehicle to be arrested. If he had not taken that action, they may well still be out and about today committing crimes, perpetrating crimes upon other people. For actually calling for his officers to do some policing, he was stood down, and that was for the second time as well. If the police commissioner doesn't have the balls, and I know in this case it was a woman, so she doesn't physically have balls, but if she doesn't have the gumption to say we have to crack down on this youth crime crisis, and all the evidence is that neither the police force nor the state government has taken any action to do so, then it is time for her to go. Someone has to stand up and say we've got to do something.
Absolutely.
Because police commissioner is, you would know, Bronwyn, is a political role as much as it is a policing role. It's a public-facing role. And so if the police commissioner can't stand up and essentially be the politician in that circumstance, they don't deserve to be there.
No, I think that's an absolute fair point, and there's no doubt something needs to be done about this spiralling crisis. Well, look, let's move on, because the under-fire boss of supermarket giant Woolworths, you know, the man who only wants to be known as Brad, walked out of an interview with an ABC journalist who pressed him on allegations of price gouging.
Sorry, the former head of the Competition Commission says his words are that we have...
by the way.
I don't think you would impugn his integrity and his understanding of competition law.
I'm just saying the world has got much more competitive.
He retired 18 months ago. He's not...
Okay, can we take that out? Is that okay? I mean, he is retired, but I shouldn't have said that, Angus. Are we going to leave it in there if we are?
Well, I mean, we're on the record. You said it. I mean, you know, let's move on, but... Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I'm done, guys. You know, I do this with good intent. You know, I don't do this with bad intent.
Look, it's uncomfortable to watch Bronwyn. Based on that interview, how can he be the CEO of a major company?
I don't think he's long for that job.
No. Absolutely.
I seriously don't. You know, we've seen the police commissioner make this great speech about how it's time for her to go. I think we need to hear one from him too. Yeah. Because, I mean, aside from the insult that he gave to the Australian people over the Australia Day question, I mean, he's, pardon me, an immigrant to this country. He took an oath or an affirmation that he would respect everything about Australia. And I don't know, he just seems to be the wrong fit for the job.
Yeah,
and I
clearly.
think I can remember working with Woolworths for so many years on things that were patriotic. It was a fine firm. It stood up for things that the Australian people believed in, and this man has been nothing but trouble.
Oh, look, absolutely, Caleb. It's uncomfortable to watch that vision, but he's about to go in front of the Select Senate Committee on supermarket prices. I mean, I don't know about you, I've never liked to watch the Senate, but I reckon I'll be watching it just to see how he goes.
Well, I suspect his team will be getting him up with the 5 Ps before he goes in there. You know, proper preparation prevents poor performance. Sometimes there's a sixth P that gets inserted in the middle there. But, 2 points. One, why is he doing a major interview in a company polo shirt?
Correct.
You're a chief executive, for heaven's sake. Put on a suit and tie and give a sense of authority for one. And there is no way that he did not know he was on the record. It is the first thing. You and I are journalists, right?
Totally.
You walk into that interview, you say to the subject, the camera's rolling, you're on the record. He knew what he was saying when he said it. Then the cogs started, oh my God, I've been caught out. Can you take it out? Like, he should have just apologised, said, look, sorry, I didn't mean that, and moved on. But going so far as to say, can we take that out? Mate, he just shot himself in 40 seconds flat.
Yeah, it's just not a good look, absolutely. Well, we look forward to the Senate committee. We'll look forward to that viewing. Caleb Bond, Bronwyn Bishop, we have to leave it there. Great to speak with you both tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, let's move on. Today, the Defence Minister unveiled an $11 billion boost to Australia's naval fleet, which will see a sharp increase in the number of warships, giving the Navy a greater firepower. But will it be enough? Joining me now is Malcolm Davis, Senior Analyst at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Malcolm, thanks for joining us. The government says complacency has to be driven out of the system when it comes to our strategic capabilities. Will taxpayers get bang for their buck on this, do you think?
Look, I think on balance, it's a positive step forward for Navy and for Defence. We are getting a larger Navy. We're getting more firepower. The challenge, of course, is when are we going to get these ships? How long will they take to arrive into service? Will the money be there right through the period to sustain their acquisition, or will we see history repeat itself as has so happened in the past, where promises are made and then they're not properly funded? So I think it is a positive step. It's a step in the right direction. But I quote Tom Cruise, show me the money. And I think that, there needs to be a fast transition for these capabilities into service.
Well, show me the money. That's such a fair point, because there are such long time frames for these projects. For example, the 11 new all-purpose frigates, they're yet to even go out to tender. Will they even get close to being delivered?
Oh, they'll be delivered, but it could take a while. If they're going out to tender, that could take a year or two before we decide which of the 4 options we get. And then they've got to be built. The first 3 are going to be built offshore. The remaining vessels are going to be built onshore. So the naval shipbuilding capabilities in Australia need to be ready for that. But there's real risk, I think, that the delays could kick in. So the timelines begin to push away from us. And as this is all happening, our Navy is getting older. The Anzac-class frigates are ageing out. And at the same time, the threat is developing dramatically. So I would hate to see a situation where, as a result of these decisions now, we end up short in the latter half of this decade when the crisis that is likely to occur around the Taiwan Straits does occur.
Yeah, look, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. Let's move on because we've now got Russian CCTV cameras which appear to show at the moment the body of opposition leader Alexei Navalny is transported from his Arctic prison during a midnight convoy. His wife insists he was killed from the nerve agent Novichok and has accused President Vladimir Putin of waiting for traces of that poison to leave his body before it is released to his family. This is what she said.
By killing Alexei, Putin killed half of me, half of my heart, and half of my soul. But I still have the other half, and it tells me that I have no right to give up. I will continue the work of Alexei Navalny, continue to fight for our country.
Quite a firm message there, Malcolm. What's your reaction to what she's said?
Look, I think she's a brave person because Putin doesn't hesitate to take reprisals against his opponents. I think that the Navalny issue is just one of many issues here. The key issue in my mind is the fact that the Ukrainians have had now a series of significant reversals on the battlefield. We're having to lose one town, Adivka, just in the last day or so. The Russians now are emboldened, they're advancing, and I think the real risk is that in Congress, in the US Congress, the GOP is going to deny them funds, deny them military aid, and that could see significant reversals for the Ukrainians. The point is, if Russia wins in Ukraine, Putin will be emboldened to turn his attentions elsewhere. His strategic ambitions do not end at Ukraine. He would be eyeing the Baltic states of Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia and Poland.
And that's the worry. Malcolm Davis, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Well, stay with us. King Charles responds to Prince Harry's offer to return as a working royal, part-time, that is. Plus, is it time the competition watchdog investigate other industries apart from supermarkets? That's coming up. Welcome back. Well, Prince Harry, the non-royal, has apparently offered to come back and help out with royal duties due to his father, King Charles's health, asking to take up a role similar to the one he and his wife proposed pre-Megxit. But my next guest insists Prince William will block any attempts from his wayward brother to return to the firm, as you would probably expect. Royal editor of The Mirror, Russell Myers, joins me now. Russell, great to see you. Your exclusive for The Mirror over the weekend insists that there is a 0% chance of Harry coming back in any capacity. Seriously, does he want to be a royal or not?
Well, good evening, Danica. Well, that's a big question, isn't it? Because over the last few years, we've had royal rift after royal rift, and Harry sort of staking his claim to have financial freedom outside the royal family. Of course, they left with sort of a blaze of glory after deciding to quit the royal family and saying that they were going to make tens and tens of millions of dollars in the corporate world. And it hasn't really worked out well for Harry and Meghan. The Netflix deal is on the rocks. Meghan lost her Spotify deal. Harry's memoir was pretty explosive. Nobody spared from his barbs within the pages of the book. And so the details of this move by Prince Harry about that he wants a temporary role within the family, that he's willing to come back and help out the firm, seeing as King Charles is on the sideline with his cancer treatment. Princess of Wales is still off work with her after her abdominal surgery, and it's beggars belief, to be honest. I think that Harry seems to think he can have a role within the family, but the family have certainly other ideas.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's extraordinary. He now wants to partake, considering he's a non-royal. And now, look, this is quite interesting, Russell, because Prince William is about to embark on a mission to recognise the human suffering caused by events in the Middle East, as well as the rise of anti-Semitism around the world. Why would a royal want to start meddling in Middle East politics, do you think, Russell? However well-intended, of course.
Well, it's interesting. I travelled with the Prince of Wales back in 2018, and he was the first royal to visit both Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. And I spoke to him and his aides at the time, and he was speaking about a lifelong plan to try and help out in the Middle East. And that is a huge, huge task. I mean, nobody has managed it, politician or state leader otherwise. And for him to now get involved, saying that he's witnessed the human suffering on both sides and realises that something must be done. So, listen, he's going to use his platform. He's going to be speaking to people who have actually been out on the ground, trying to help with the humanitarian process, trying to piece the pieces of this very, very complex puzzle together. And I think, this really is sort of a life plan for Prince William. His duties extend beyond the reach of both home and abroad. And I think that it's a worthy cause for him.
Oh, yeah, look, fair enough. Always a fascinating world in the royal land. Russell Myers, always good to speak with you. Thanks for joining us. Well, there are calls for the scope of Queensland's inquiry into supermarket costs to be expanded to include insurance prices, transport costs and electricity. The state opposition has announced it will negotiate with crossbench MPs to secure support for the changes and amend the Select Committee's terms of reference. Chief economist and co-founder of Macro Business, Leith Van Onselen, joins me. Leith, thanks for joining us. The opposition is arguing here that it must include items and sectors that the state government can actually influence. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, look, I think that's a fair assessment. Obviously, we've seen, cost of living pressures across a whole range of issues: insurance, power, flights, petrol, all those sorts of things. All those prices have skyrocketed. So if the government is really concerned about cost of living issues, it probably should include these broader issues rather than just focusing on supermarkets, which is just a very small part of it.
Well, realistically, how much change can an inquiry of this nature bring about? Does it have any teeth?
Well, not really. Like most inquiries, it's basically a political stunt to sort of give voters the impression that it cares and that it's doing something and it's looking after their best interests. But we've seen these sorts of inquiries amount to not much repeatedly. For example, the 20-odd housing affordability inquiries we've had over the past couple of decades. So it won't actually do anything other than maybe provide some useful information.
Well, that's not encouraging to hear, but you're absolutely right, and hopefully something does come out of it. Now, private colleges in Australia are blocking applications from students in India, Pakistan, Nigeria and other countries as part of an unprecedented reaction to the government's visa crackdowns. Leith, was this always going to happen as a result of the government's new migration strategy?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, it's a little bit too late. Look, the Albanese government unfortunately opened the immigration floodgates after the 2022 Jobs and Skills Summit, and that was basically led by international students. Unfortunately, many of these students weren't genuine, and they've used dodgy private ghost colleges to basically come to Australia for backdoor permanent residency. So these changes by Labor are basically in response to the widespread rorting by these fake students and also Australia's record immigration flows.
Well, that's it. I mean, look, this was always on the cards and something did have to be done. But what impact could fewer foreign students have on our economy, do you think?
Yeah, look, it'll obviously have an impact on the economy. All migration does. So if you have less inputs in people, i.e. students, you're going to have less outputs in terms of economic activity and gross domestic product. But obviously having less fake students in Australia will improve the overall quality of the migration system. It should boost productivity and reduce pressure on housing infrastructure. So it's a positive development, although it's kind of a little bit too late and after the horse has already bolted.
Yeah, look, it was a bit too late, but, hopefully it does have its desired effect. Now, look, this is interesting because Taylor Swift's 3 Melbourne concerts, by the way, I feel like all we've been talking about is Taylor Swift for the last few weeks here in Australia, but her 3 concerts in Melbourne have generated an astonishing $174 million for the Victorian economy. Leith, that's extraordinary. Is that a good boost, do you think?
Yeah, look, it's a fantastic boost. Look, it's especially good in this case because a lot of the visitors actually came from overseas. So what that means is that instead of Victoria just stealing economic activity away from other states, we've actually, earned quite a significant amount of tourism exports, which is fantastic. So basically, yeah, look, it's a big economic boon.
Do you think Sydney can do the same?
Oh, pretty much. So Sydney has 4 concerts scheduled, whereas Melbourne only had 3. Obviously, the venues aren't as big as the MCG was. Those were Taylor Swift's biggest ever concerts. So basically, look, Sydney should get a similar result. The only problem is obviously Sydney's weather. Hopefully it stays away and doesn't rain in the parade.
Fingers crossed, absolutely. Leith Van Onselen, thanks for joining us. And that's all we've got time for today. Stay tuned. The great Paul Murray is up next.